Welcome to Solutions, where listening will leave you inspired by solutions to issues you or others you know may be struggling with in the public education system today. And before we jump into this incredible conversation, it is important to note that the thoughts and opinions expressed on this platform by Roberta Price Gardner, a faculty member at Kennesaw State University, are solely those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the stance or views of the institution. I am Olivia Wall, and I am humbled to welcome my guests today, Katie Rinderle, Scott Stuart, and Dr. Roberta Price Gardner. Let me tell you a little bit about them. Katie Rinderle is a 10-year veteran educator and gifted specialist from Cobb County, Georgia. I have the gift of calling Katie both a colleague and a friend after following her story since February of this year. Dr. Roberta Price Gardner is an associate professor of reading and literacy education at Kennesaw State University in the state of Georgia. And Scott Stuart is a best-selling children's book author who is committed to creating content that empowers young kids. His books have appeared on numerous bestseller lists across the globe. I don't think I could possibly articulate how honored I am to have Solutions be holding this space for this important conversation. Welcome, 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 Katie, Scott, and Roberta. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us.
I always name an issue, and it's the reason that I am honored to have you as guests. Right now, in the States, many states nationwide are passing censorship legislation that is under the guise of protecting children, but that's just it. It's under the guise. It's not truly with that intent. And the solution is all of you, because you are the folks that are brave, you're inclusive, and you're advocating for being allies to the LGBTQIA plus community, as well as just standing up for what's right for children. So I am excited to have a conversation today. Before we jump in, I love to ask guests who inspiring educators are from their lives. Katie, would you start us off?
Sure. I have had many inspiring educators that I've come across, but the one that stands out the most is Dr. Gardner. She was my most recent teacher, educator. And, speaking as a former student, I have been so lucky to have her show me how not only to support her students, but to really show up with advocacy and education. And really the fact that she is helping to form our future generations of educators in a time where that is so critical. I mean, what is not inspiring about that, right? Yeah. So she truly is amazing, and she has helped me through so much, and she inspires me every day.
Wonderful. Dr. Gardner, how about you?
That's so sweet, Katie, to say that. No doubt, not to be cliche, but I told Katie this when I started to actively support her, right? So as an educator, you're supporting your students in ways that are aligned with, academics and preparedness. But Katie has inspired me because, right, this idea of the ivory tower, Katie smoked me out, right? So you can't just be in the ivory tower and say that you do advocacy work. You really do need to be boots on the ground.
Yes.
And our boots on the ground in the academy cannot just be at conferences, right, and in safe havens. It has to be at school board meetings. It has to be in the field. And so for that reason, I'm going to say you definitely, Katie, and also a shout out to a former educator I had, Dr. Anita O'Neill at Clark Atlanta University, was the person who turned me on to African-American children's literature and children's literature that was inclusive. And so, that was really a spark. And so I think those two educators are it for me in this moment. So thank you for asking that question, Olivia.
Absolutely. Scott, how about you?
I would have always said, I had this one teacher when I was a kid, Mr. D. I don't even remember his full name. I just always called him Mr. D, who was amazing. But since becoming a parent, my son in what we call prep here in Australia, which is kind of like grade 0, before grade 1. He had this teacher, Mr. Coleman, who was just absolutely spectacular. He was so inclusive. He was so kind. He took this very nervous kid who was struggling with a few things and just gave him so much love and so much space to be completely himself. We're still really great friends with him now, and I still feel really uncomfortable calling him Tim. I'm like, it's Mr. Coleman. And I don't know if that ever leaves. But yeah, he would definitely be the most inspiring teacher that's been like directly in our lives.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think what listeners have to know, I want to start with Katie. And Katie, as a teacher myself, I think it's critical that we have a solid core around what do we believe to be true as teachers, and how does that show up in classroom practices? And I've been working on this for myself over the last couple of years as a teacher. And I want to start with that. What do you believe to be true as a teacher, and how does it show up in your classroom practice?
Everything that I do is deeply rooted in being a student-centered and inclusive classroom environment. I feel that when students are at the center of their learning, it only enriches the environment for everybody. So, that looks like, engaging students in real world application alongside critical literacy, truly showing them ways to bring in those experiences, their own experiences, their own funds of knowledge, and that being the core of our learning. Literature and literacy, that is something that is obviously part of all of my practices, day in and day out, whether it was in the classroom setting when I taught primary and intermediate grades, or even as a gifted specialist. Really provoking students in their critical thinking, asking questions, challenging one another, challenging me. That is what makes me excited to go to work every day. That is what I continue to learn from. And I have the best job, right? So yes. All of the practices that I'm fortunate to be able to provide my students truly are centered around them.
And so I hear you saying, critical thinking. And I think something right now that's happening worldwide is folks are way too eager to have debate over discourse. And when I think of discourse, it's really being a listener and understanding other people's perspectives and where people are coming from and who they are. So I need to pause with all that you just said, because I think listeners would be shocked to know that you were recently fired. And this is something I've been following your journey, your story since February when you were put on leave. But, I want people to hear from you. You were fired primarily under Georgia's 2022 student protection laws. So what happened? What in the world happened?
Well, let's jump right in. So I am a gifted specialist. So I serve students in 1st through 5th grades. And in March, I was teaching 5th grade students, and they were given the opportunity. We have read-alouds every week. It's kind of how we start our day with each other after they return from their special areas. So I had purchased a lot of books the month prior to this morning, and one of them being My Shadow is Purple, written by Scott. And yes, that is it. And I had a bin of books, and I spread them across the front of my room. And like I said, is giving students choice. I allowed them the opportunity to vote on the books that they wanted to read. And My Shadow is Purple had the majority vote. So we read the book, and then students were able to reflect with one another, and then they all created a shadow poem of their own. 2 days later, I was called into my principal's office, and it was brought to my attention that a parent had complained that I read a divisive book. I had broken some divisive policy, and that following Monday, I was placed on administrative leave. That followed an investigation that lasted all the way until May. And that's when I was made aware that I was being recommended for termination in the district.
So when I knew of all of this that had happened to you, I talked to my own children often about you and your journey, because they know I'm a teacher, and that I believe in advocacy and being an ally. And then I received a message from Dr. Gardner, coincidentally, months after I started following your journey. So I know that's my connection with you, even though I knew of you and what was happening. Scott, how did you become aware of Katie and connect with her originally?
But it had kind of come at an interesting time, because here in Australia, I had just had a few library visits, like author visits, cancelled because of big right-wing protests, and like they were going to turn up and like harass everybody and all that sort of stuff. And one of my books had just been in Parliament with a big, similar situation going on here. And so when I got the email, I often will receive an email like that and just go, this is someone trying to get something out of me and delete, but it kind of came at the right time, and I read it and immediately responded. And that's when I really became aware of it. And then, I don't know when it was, maybe around June, whenever it was put publicly by the law center, I just started getting 8,000 social media tags, a day on this situation. But I was, glad to be already across it. But yeah, it really came at such an interesting time when this was just happening, both here, there. It had come at the same time. There had been 3 or 4 other issues in America at the same time with my books. So it kind of all just happened at that one time.
Yeah. So let's go to that segue. What inspires you as an author? Why did you write this book in particular? I'll show everyone again. It's a beautiful book, and all of your books I'm a number one fan. And so what inspires you, and why did you write this book in particular?
So I wrote this book because I have another book called My Shadow is Pink, which is based on my own son. It's about a young boy who likes things that we have traditionally deemed, culturally feminine, and it's about his journey of accepting himself. And mostly it's really about his dad's journey of, getting over his own biases and accepting his son. And every time I would go and do a reading of this to a group of kids, we'd always finish the book and I would say, what color are your shadows? And kids immediately, they'd say, my shadow is yellow, my shadow is gold with a unicorn horn and a rainbow tail. And like they'd have this huge variety of answers. And this one event that I went to, I happened to be the person, I wasn't the person reading the book. I was sitting back listening, which was already awkward because, I don't like hearing my own books read to me. And I was listening, and they finished the book, and the educator then said, okay, everybody, what color are your shadows? And kids started to answer, and the educator said, well, no, blue or pink. Which one would your shadows be? And they immediately gave the kids these 2 specific categories to choose between. And you could see every kid suddenly had to change their entire thought process and answer just to fit themselves in these 2 boxes. So that was really the impetus to start really researching the topic that you can call like being non-binary, and you're existing outside the binary of like blue and pink. And I'm not sure how long, a year later, I finished writing the book, but that was really the impetus for it. Because as an author, I really want to inspire kids to be able to be themselves, but also to be able to see other people in the books that they read. I know that I am one of the extraordinarily fortunate, people who can see themselves in every piece of media on earth. I'm a straight white dude. So basically any book, that we pick up will have me in it.
Yes.
So I want kids to be able to see kids who aren't like them, to develop that empathy, to help them become more kind. But also I really want kids who don't fit into that very, very narrow categorization that we've placed on kids to be able to see themselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that background. And I continue to go back to a conversation I had with Morgan Jackson, who is an English teacher in Las Vegas, Nevada. And her words always continue to bounce around in my mind. And she said to me, Livy, if we're removing books from our classrooms, it's not about the book. It's giving the message to any child that resonates with that book that they don't belong. So you can keep pulling these books, but we're sending our children some really scary messages of, who gets to sit at the table, who gets to be part of a group, and who is excluded. So these messages are scary to me, as a mom, as a teacher, as an ally. And Roberta, I know Katie did say that you are an inspiring educator in her life. How did you connect with Katie originally? She's given us a bit of history. And then I want to pivot and ask for you to share, how has this Georgia legislation impacted you as a professor? Because I'm sure it has.
Yeah, no doubt. My introduction to Katie, I teach in the graduate program at the university where I am. And Katie was a student in a course that is entitled Trends and Issues in Literacy Education. And during, I think it was the middle model, like the fourth model, I always switch out that module. And it usually is a module that reflects a trend or hot button issue. And for the last, 2 years, it has been banned books and censorship. And so right around the time that module started, Katie, we were 4 weeks into the class, and, Katie was performing well and doing extraordinarily well as a student. But then she reached out to me to let me know that I was going to be likely reading an article and hearing a little bit more about the fact that she was at the center of this controversy. And maybe, I think it was like the next weekend, Katie, or maybe 2 days later, the Southern Poverty Law Center article came out. And I just want to say that Katie had already started to respond to the issues around censorship within like the group conversation. And again, talk about that topic of bravery and courage.
Yeah.
To know that she was at the center of that, and that she was willing to engage with peers some of whom did not agree or think that your book, Scott, was appropriate. Yeah. Right. To read to students. I thought was, again, incredibly courageous of her. But she was already my student, but she became even more, of a student who I felt I needed to, I don't want to say protect, right? But just support with a lot more rigor than, I would have had she not shared that intimate reality and the roller coaster that she was going to, she was already on the ride, but that it was just going to just go a lot faster. That was, we moved from having a student teacher relationship to one that was a lot more, I don't know, I'm still trying to find the words, Katie, for what I think we have become. It's a partnership, right? In a lot of ways. We're teaching
I was going to say family.
Family.
I
in
saw
some
you go
ways,
like
yeah.
this when you were talking about you giving you know
Did
your
you?
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that speaks volumes. It's family, it's a partnership. We have to circle up with people and have each other's backs because these are really
Yeah, and I
hard
mean,
times.
I think we also sort of have this cliche way of saying that like our students teach us, but like, no, it really has been that kind of sort of symbiotic relationship of her teaching me and then me teaching her and us sort of, going back and forth in our dialogue and the ways that we're trying to collectively make sense of this. And it's not something you can make sense of, right?
No.
So to answer the second part of your question, it has impacted teacher education tremendously. And it's not something you can make sense of for pre-service teachers or for in-service and advanced teachers like Katie.
Right.
Katie is a 10-year veteran, and she can't make sense of it. You can't make sense of a law that was intentionally written, right, to be vague and to be a disruption,
Yeah.
and a warning, which is what I believe this is. So it has created a lot of challenges in supporting and preparing teachers for engaging with inclusive literature and literature writ large. I think any book is in danger, right? I don't think it's just an obvious book that breaks tradition or norms. Any book is in danger.
Well, and I'm going to lean on the word fear right now. I think that sometimes fear is evoked to quiet voices. And Katie, I'm going to ask you now to catch us up. You're put on leave. You were recommended for termination. And then fast forward, what has happened now? Where are you with your status as a teacher?
So after I was recommended for termination, we went towards a different process. I went through our tribunal hearing. So typically the board members of our school district sit on the, I guess, like jury. They will listen to both sides, and that was actually changed a bit. We had a tribunal. So there was a hand-picked tribunal, handpicked by the superintendent, and it was a 2-day hearing. It's very long. That we heard from the districts, a principal, we heard from some parents, and the tribunal ultimately decided that I should not be fired. 2 days after that, the school board had overturned that decision and decided to go ahead and fire me. And so that led to this next step, which is we are currently appealing that decision to the State Board of Education. And that's where we currently are. But, through all of that, I have heard from parents and students, my own students. I think that's been the most challenging part is, hearing how it has impacted students, my students across our district. I mean, these are fiercely brave and brilliant individuals. And just last week, I saw them show up to our school board meeting and speak. And they held a press conference. They organized other students. I mean, these students are remarkable. And in this process of waiting on my own case, that's kind of something that brings me some hope and is very empowering, is to see how students are responding in the face of intimidation and in the face of, hatred. They are sharing what they envision for education.
They are. And I had the experience, I'm going to call it an experience, of watching the footage from last week's board meeting and watching the children and grown-ups, speak and share their perspectives was so incredibly moving. And I do have hope. But many of us are not standing in your shoes right now. And you are continuing to show up, which has been incredible. And we have had conversations, just us, of how, what inspires you and what keeps you going. And I know what keeps me going on a daily basis. It's the kids. Because they're the future, so we have to help them have a voice. So I think to support you, to support your advocacy, what's the best way to get in touch with each of you? Because each of you are an ally in your own way. So Scott, you have a magnificent website, and you are quite active on social. I love your reels. I love your posts. That they're engaging and lovely. So what's the best way for us to support you and connect?
Oh, look, I think the best way in this situation would be to direct that support to Katie and to everything that's happening over there. You can jump on my social media if you like, but I think direct it towards Katie. But actually, is it okay if I ask a question? Katie, there's something that I really don't understand. I don't understand, like, the education board said don't fire Katie. Like the school said, we have to push this to the education board. The education board said, don't fire Katie. Then the school board said, we're going to fire you anyway. Is this legal? Like, I don't understand. Maybe it's just because I'm not from America. Like, I don't understand how this process can happen.
So, good question. In the entire history of our school board, we've never voted on the process for educators. And the tribunal was three prior administrators in our district. They have retired and now sit, on tribunals, usually for student affairs and student disciplinary meetings. But ultimately, the way that works with due process, it goes back to the board for the final say. So the tribunal was selected to hear it and then was given to the board, and the board decided to uphold the superintendent's original recommendation. So they do have the authority to overturn the tribunal's decision. But
because it sounds like it was, I'm so sorry for taking over these questions.
No, you're fine.
No,
because it sounds like one parent can hold so much power. I know here, if I was to complain about something happening in my son's classroom, I'd pretty much be told to get over it. It seems like there's one parent can bring a complaint, which then overrules like any positive things. Like, is that how it works?
I think it depends on where you are in the States.
Sure.
And that's what makes it quite challenging. I live in New York State, and I live in a place that is very inclusive, and everyone is welcome to share their perspectives and viewpoints and be heard, but it's very rare that a book would be banned where I live. Katie, I think it's maybe different for you.
Right. Last year we had a trio of bills passed, and one of them being the parental rights. And how that has been deciphered and used seems that we're continuously asking, Dr. Gardner, continuously asking, which parents or, which students are being protected, which parents' rights are being considered. And in this case, the parents that did come out and email the district, email the parents, the administrators on behalf of myself, and then also for an inclusive education and in support of reading your book, those emails were pretty much responded to by saying, thanks for sharing your concerns. and then never given to us. So we continue to ask, which parents are we talking about? And I think that says so much. And that's the problem with these type of laws, these anti-education laws and these parental rights, which parents. And I think that we can see which parents.
Yeah. Okay.
It is place, right, Olivia? Like you mentioned, it is place, but it's also, the parent, right? Yeah. So you can be in the same county or district that Katie taught in, but if you're a parent who looks like me, you are unlikely to have your concerns validated. So,
yeah, okay.
We're seeing parents show up to school board meetings and speaking on behalf of their children. And not just the students are showing up, but the actual parents are also showing up, and, they're not being responded to and really being dismissed. So that brings a whole different set of issues that we are trying to address and bring awareness to.
Yeah. Is the primary focus on books that are supportive of the LGBTQ plus community? Is that the drive, or is there like a racial component? Is it just anything that's not, what are the books that are primarily being targeted in the US right now?
An attack on diverse and inclusive and affirming literature. So books that are written by Black authors, by authors of color across the board, representative of LGBTQ plus communities. These are books that are sharing diverse stories and voices. Dr. Gardner can really dive into that one. I'm going to let you kind of take some of that over.
Katie, you nailed it, and you were in that unit, and Katie wrote a really wonderful paper about policy and inclusive books. And during Katie's trial, one of the books that they used to talk about her, quote, prior history of reading books that she had no business reading was a parent complained about Stacey Abrams' book. The title, Stacey's Big Words.
Extraordinary Words.
Extraordinary Words.
It's a word about a spelling bee.
Yeah. They complained about Katie, one parent, right? Is that correct? Katie complained that Katie had read that book.
They had not read the book and did not know what the book was about, but it was. They said that it was by a divisive person.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny because I feel as though here one of the big shifts culturally has been, we went from the 90s where certain communities were featured in media, but mostly to be laughed at, to be the butt of the joke. And now that those communities are being treated with respect in media, now there's a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. I remember growing up and I would see, gay couples on TV all the time, but they were the joke, and now that, we want you to just accept them as people, now that's too much to ask, is that kind of the shift that's happened similarly in the US?
That's an interesting perspective. And I would say yes. I think that also the leadership of the district speaks volumes of how the district is run, specific school districts. And I think that that's a lot of power that's held.
Yeah, my son is in school right now. They are reading a book about a refugee to Australia, somebody who came from another country to Australia, and it's all about women's rights and how she was not allowed to do anything in her former country, and hearing the conversations that my son has now, when he comes home and he's talking about all these issues, is so fascinating. I think it's beautiful. But I also recognize, as I was listening to him talking about it, I couldn't help but also think about Katie, and I was like, would they allow this book, to be discussed, where
Just
you are, you know what I mean?
sort of like, no.
Yeah.
Katie, what is the best way that we can support you? People that love you and want to support you have started a GoFundMe, and I will put the link in the show notes. But how can we support you with the advocacy work?
Really just that kind of goes along with our call to action.
Yeah.
If you want to kind of merge those two, but
it does.
Really, I kind of like what Dr. Gardner said, like a lot of this starts in those grassroots efforts and showing up for board meetings, being aware of what's going on in your district, being aware of policies that are being put in place that are, on the books. Really just staying informed, even writing letters to the editor. Somebody are saying, especially teachers who are scared to speak out.
Yeah.
You can write an anonymous letter to the editor, really bringing awareness to these issues and advocating for education, for your teachers, for students, and for inclusive education.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are either not aware or are just kind of finding out, and even in my own area. So I have found that has been a little surprising. People nationwide and all the way over by where Scott is, are aware. And then I'll go down the road and somebody has not even heard of that where we are.
It's fascinating.
So also empowering your children, kind of making them aware of their rights, giving power to their voices, voting. I say that a million times. Voting for people who are pro-education, for, knowing who is coming up on those elections. There's so many things that we can all do. I think that it really does start in a grassroots at a level. So,
yeah. And that can be seen with the board meeting last week. People are showing up, and I think that's magnificent. Dr. Gardner, what's the best way we can advocate and support for higher education and the work you're doing with educators?
I think advocating for higher education is definitely a larger issue right now.
Yeah.
There's a progressive erosion of the civic mission of public schools. And so, again, I think it is showing up for school board meetings, knowing when those meetings are. In higher education, I think the workforce for teachers is eroding. Many people know that there is a teacher shortage.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you want to advocate for, as Katie said, pro-education, then you need to make sure that you're supporting teachers, and you're supporting teachers in their mission to actually educate children and not, in the state of Georgia, they keep using the word indoctrinate, right? It's like we're indoctrinating teachers, though, and we are not helping them to be as well read as, they want to be.
Yes.
And the reason I'm saying that is because increasingly in the state of Georgia, they are telling educators and teacher educators what they can and cannot teach to teachers, right? So it's just being politically active is just critical right now. Voting these people out who have been voted in, because the detriment is just real. It's a detriment to education. It's a detriment to, our profession. I could go on and on, but I'll just sort of stop there. And support Katie. Follow Katie's case. It's not over. I think her attorneys shared that this is only the beginning.
Yes.
And I do think that Katie's case is the proverbial canary in the coal mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
For teachers and teachers' ability to be able to teach.
Yeah. And watching the footage of last week's board meeting, a student stood up. Her name is Elizabeth. She goes by Beth Hudson. And she shared that she had participated in the Helen Ruffin Reading Bowl as a participant from 4th grade to 12th grade. She graduated from Cobb High School in 2023. And recently, the Helen Ruffin is said to not be happening because teachers don't feel comfortable with advocating or leading the teams because of fear of being terminated for the books. But this student, Beth Hudson, went on to she's a student getting her English degree, and her words are what I'd love to wrap our conversation with, because it's from a former student of the school district that had the privilege of being exposed to lots of beautiful books. And these are her words. Everyone matters. And even though we all differ in race, religion, sexuality, class, nationality, and so much more, each student should learn acceptance, love, and most importantly, respect in order to become a successful adult. Thank you, Beth Hudson. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you, Scott, for continuing to show up and be brave and fight for acceptance, fight for love, and fight for respect. Our kids, our children need grown-ups like you. And I'm just grateful for this conversation and this time to talk. Thank you.
I just really wanted to tell you, Scott, that so many of my own students have reached out to me after they follow you, I think on Instagram too. And just you speaking out about this, and even the parents, it has meant so much to them. And so much so that these students were trying to start a petition at school when all of this happened, and are continuing to try to advocate and start these groups in their middle school. And, you know, it's beyond my wildest dreams that I would be here talking to you after purchasing your book from our Scholastic Book Fair. But, you know, you really have made an impact on so many, including myself. And just thank you for being the author that you are and the human that you are. And even all the way in Australia, taking a call with me and, you know, just caring. It really speaks so much about who you are. And I'm deeply thankful and grateful. So
thank you. I'm maybe it's because I'm not good at compliments, but I'm going to redirect that. And I'm going to say,
no, I mean,
no, I totally appreciate, I appreciate that incredibly. But the students, you're doing all that, it sounds like more of an impact that you have made. And, so I think that you should be really, really proud of the students that you have helped shape. But I'll take the compliment too. So.
Thank you. Take the compliment. I mean, just so you know, one of my students that voted for this book that day, this child I've taught in 4th grade and then also now in 5th grade. And this child has struggled so much with anxiety this year, and not being with me every day. It's hard. I can only get that child once a week.
Yep.
And they have tried to communicate through their sketches with me. And this day that we read this book, that child was beaming and told me it was the best day that they have ever had at school. And they drew their shadow with themselves with a microphone, singing, and drew at the bottom half with a skirt, and just shared that they finally felt like they were able to not feel woe and to be able to feel their heart glow, and that was okay to be themselves. And I can't even tell you how much that meant to me. And I know how much that meant to their families. And I try not to get emotional, but I do get emotional because I'm a highly sensitive human being. But even students that were not in my classroom, their parents, I had taught them last year, their parents reached out to me and wanting to support this just because their child said that this changed them and made that they have gone through bullying and all this at school. And they're trying to spread awareness in a different way, but has also transitioned now that they are in middle school. And I mean, you're affirming kids in a way that is so needed and critical. And it's just thank you for writing books that let teachers like me provide spaces for students like mine to thrive and to have all their needs met so that they can learn and so that they can, find their place.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I had to share that. I had to share that just so I could, but yeah.
Thank you, Katie.
It's funny because you don't really, especially being an author, things are very removed from me, and I remember going and doing this reading at this school, and I never say good morning, boys and girls. I'm always like, hey, everybody, or like, something silly. It's mostly silly is usually my go-to. And I don't know what it was. I think I was like the fourth or fifth person, and everybody like, good morning, boys and girls, good morning, boys and girls, good morning, boys and girls. And it had just gotten into my head. And for some reason, like I walked out and subconsciously it kicked in. I said, hey, boys and girls. And then like I heard myself and I tried to fix it, after I said it. I was like, hey, boys and girls, and non-binary kids, and anybody else, and everyone. Hey, everybody. And I remember there was this one single kid in the center of the whole auditorium. And their mouth just like dropped open and they started crying. And, I did the whole presentation thing and they came up to me afterwards and I thought I had been really offensive or something. I thought, how have I made this child cry? And they came up to me and they said, this is the first time we've ever heard a person of authority use the concept of a non-binary kid, and it was so impactful. So, the inclusion stuff really matters, and no, so I it's a long way of saying I really appreciate your words and I really appreciate everything you are doing too.
Thank you. I'm terrible at responding to that too, but thank you.
Well, I'm grateful for all of you and all of your time and letting this podcast have the honor of holding the conversation as a safe space. And I'm excited for folks to learn, Katie, of your journey if they don't already know about it, and to feel empowered and brave because of you. So thank you. And thank you to Roberta and Scott as well for taking the time to be part of this conversation.
No, thank you.
Dream team.
Absolutely.
Dream team.
Thank you so much for having us.
Too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
Take care. Solutions is a podcast created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Special thanks to my guests, Katie Rinderle, Scott Stuart, and Dr. Roberta Price Gardner. Also, a big thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music that's playing in the background. I would love for you to share the podcast far and wide, leave a review, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Solutions Podcast. If you'd like to become a Solutions sponsor or share episode ideas, leave me a SpeakPipe voice memo at my website, oliviawall.com/podcast, or connect via email at solutionspodcast@gmail.com. Please keep listening. Let's continue finding inspiration together.